In my previous life, Ethan was diagnosed with cancer, and everyone kept it from me. To set me free, he started having affairs, verbally abusing me, and giving me the silent treatment. I finally agreed to divorce him when I couldn't take it anymore. His friends then took the moral high ground to lecture me about his noble intentions and reveal his terminal illness. Devastated, I committed suicide. Yet after my death, Ethan miraculously recovered. I watched him weep bitterly at my tombstone, then regain his footing with friends' encouragement and marry his mistress. Returning to this fateful gathering, Ethan jokingly proposed divorce. Instead of getting angry, I calmly replied, "Sure." The luxurious private room fell into eerie silence as I kept eating my bird's nest soup undisturbed. His hand gradually slipped away from Viv's grasp. The handsome face that had playfully declared love for another woman now froze in a grimace. He never expected this reaction. He knew how desperately I loved him. How I'd typically throw tantrums over such jokes. How could I possibly agree so calmly? His scheming friends exchanged bewildered glances. Their carefully orchestrated plan to humiliate me collapsed as the plot veered sharply off script. Yet I felt no triumph. My gaze swept across their faces before settling on Viv's striking features. Last lifetime, I'd considered this glamorous socialite my closest confidant, forgetting she'd been Ethan's childhood friend. Her fierce loyalty during peaceful times made her betrayal cut deeper when she gleefully kicked over my grave in my ghostly presence. Now feigning distress between us, Viv masterfully redirected the group's hostility toward me. Jay slammed his chair back, storming over with his signature temper. "Lucy, don't push it," he barked, the veins on his neck bulging. My eyes remained locked on Ethan, who stood pale and rigid, his earlier smugness replaced by something resembling panic. The elaborate revenge plot I'd mentally rehearsed for decades suddenly felt hollow. These people weren't worth another tear. I already said it was a joke. Can't you take it gracefully? Are you that fragile? How ironic. They were the ones making insensitive jokes at my expense. Yet somehow I became the villain for not laughing along. Jay had always wielded words like barbed arrows. I used to think his sharp tongue was just part of his personality, something everyone endured, until I realized he only reserved this particular cruelty for me. As Ethan's wife, I'd never truly been accepted by his inner circle. I ignored Jay's ranting, keeping my gaze locked with Ethan's. When he saw my unwavering resolve, realization finally dawned. I meant every word. A bitter laugh escaped him. With deliberate cruelty, he yanked Viv into his arms, staring defiantly at me as he spat. "Fine. Pack your things. We'll file for divorce tomorrow." Then, before everyone's shocked eyes, he crashed his lips onto Viv's. The kiss transformed from punishing force to something darker, more intimate. Harsh overhead lights cast dramatic shadows as Viv's slender neck arched under Ethan's possessive grip, her initial resistance melting into collusion as her hands crept up to clasp behind his head. Gasps erupted around us, followed by the frenzied clicking of smartphone cameras. Standing mere feet away, I witnessed every devastating detail: the tremble of Viv's lashes, the way Ethan's thumb brushed her jawline. My bloodless lips parted soundlessly. Something fragile deep within me shattered when his mouth claimed another's. The fracture silent but irreparable. Blindly turning away, I stumbled into the misty night. Streetlights blurred through rain as skeletal tree branches clawed at the gloom. A couple huddled nearby suddenly took off running, the man sheltering his girlfriend under his jacket. I watched their silhouettes disappear into a waiting car, feeling like I'd forgotten something vital. The realization struck when I found the umbrella. Beneath folded sweaters in my suitcase lay a transparent rain shield, its canopy blooming with childish cartoon doodles in permanent marker. Memories flooded back: rainy school days when I'd linger under eaves with my desk mate, watching gray skies swallow the world. We'd shared this umbrella countless times, our laughter echoing through downpours as cartoon ducks and stars danced above us. Now the plastic felt cold against my trembling fingers, each whimsical drawing mocking what we'd lost. Tears fell freely, mingling with the rain still dripping from my hair. He must have forgotten his umbrella. But there was no one left at home to bring him one. I suddenly felt a pang of softness. After wrestling with myself, I finally thrust my umbrella into his hands. "Keep it. Consider it thanks for tutoring me." I feigned casual generosity to mask the flutter in my chest, handing over my favorite umbrella. Without waiting for his reaction, I ducked under my friend's umbrella and urged her to hurry away. My friend giggled at my flaming cheeks. I playfully shoved her, yet couldn't resist glancing back through the rain curtain. The lanky teen in blue and white uniform stood out in the crowd, my umbrella clutched firmly in his hand. As rain sheeted from the sky, my heartbeat roared louder than the storm. The next day brought relentless drizzle. I've forgotten what emotions churned within me when we met again, but remember every precise movement as Ethan entered through the classroom's back door. My transparent cartoon umbrella didn't join the rainbow pile in the corridor corner. Instead, it rested in those slender pianist's hands, its surface meticulously dried with a soft handkerchief. He smoothed every crease before storing it reverently in his desk alongside textbooks. 18-year-old Ethan looked up, catching my unguarded gaze. His crescent moon eyes crinkled with a smile as he vowed, "I'll treasure this forever." Though unspoken, our synchronized heartbeats between desk rows confessed the truth. His promise meant more than the umbrella. The rain stopped. I dried my tears and picked up the long-forgotten umbrella. Its yellowed plastic bore ghostly cartoon outlines, rusted ribs exuding decay. I sat vigil by the window until dawn's first light carved sharp shadows across the floor. Stiff-limbed, I rose and tossed the relic into the trash. Then I dialed Ethan's number. That summer storm from our youth needed closure. The phone rang endlessly before a sleep, rough and feminine voice answered. "Hello? Who's this?" Viv's yawn sounded theatrically exaggerated against my silence. After a pause, she murmured with faux embarrassment, "Wrong phone. Let me wake Eth. Don't bother." My voice stayed flat. "Tell him the paperwork's ready. 3 p.m. at the Civil Affairs Bureau." I hung up before she could respond. Though famished since yesterday, nausea overwhelmed me. They swear eternal love and undying devotion. Yet in the blink of an eye, they're sleeping with someone else. Those who are meant to cheat will cheat in the end, regardless of excuses. I remembered from my past life when I accidentally discovered the truth. My heart nearly stopped from the pain. I lost all rationality, confronting them like a deranged woman. Viv wore an apologetic expression yet insisted it was all a misunderstanding. An accident, begging me not to blame Ethan. Ethan himself offered no explanation, silently enduring my tearful accusations about broken promises. His quiet suffering made everyone rally behind him. Suddenly I became the villain, the hysterical wife overreacting to innocent friendship. His calm demeanor made me question myself. Had I imagined the tension between him and Viv? Did my suspicion push them into making their ambiguous relationship real? Numbly, I signed the divorce papers. But when Ethan's condition deteriorated afterward, Jay and his crew stormed into my life, blaming me for the health crisis. They claimed Ethan had staged the affair to drive me away, not wanting to burden me as his illness progressed. Our history as childhood sweethearts turned spouses meant I'd never abandon him willingly. Now they insisted his self-destructive act proved ultimate love, that my dramatic reaction had cut his remaining 2 years to mere months. Standing alone against their chorus of accusations, I finally broke. After seeing Ethan comatose in the ICU, I jumped from the hospital roof. How pathetic. This second chance, I'll release myself from this toxic cycle. Yet here I waited at the courthouse until closing time, my headache throbbing from recent anesthesia. Ethan arrived disheveled, his designer coat hiding rumpled collar points, chestnut hair sticking up like he just rolled out of bed. He glanced at the locked doors, exhaling what might have been relief. "Reschedule," he stated coldly. I told him to contact me when available. turning away without another word. The afternoon breeze carried traces of unfamiliar perfume from his clothes. Ethan suddenly spoke up. "When you called me this morning," Viv answered. "What did she say to you?" His probing tone inexplicably ignited my anger. The resentment accumulated in my chest suddenly erupted. I turned around and sneered sarcastically. "Weren't you two lying in the same bed? How could you not know what she said?" Ethan paused. To my surprise, his expression instantly softened like spring breeze melting frost, as if confirming something. He genuinely relaxed and explained in an uncharacteristically gentle tone, "You misunderstood. I got drunk last night. She took me home since I felt unwell, then stayed to look after me." Regardless of how absurd this explanation sounded, given our current relationship, I didn't see why he'd bother clarifying. But soon, I understood. Ethan suddenly coughed in front of me, his face instantly paling. His handsome features tightened as several more coughs racked his frame. I couldn't tell if this was an act. Regardless, it wasn't my concern. I turned to leave. Rapid footsteps approached from behind as Ethan grabbed my arm. His pallid face looked terrible, jaw clenched so tightly it seemed about to crack. "I told you I'm sick," he gritted out. "And you don't care at all?" I knew about his serious illness. "So what?" I tugged my arm. "Let go." Instead of releasing me, Ethan tightened his grip, expression turning thunderous. He's the one who wanted divorce. Now that I'm agreeing, he's displeased again. After glaring murderously at me, he abruptly released my arm with another violent cough. "Fine. I'll let you go," he rasped, voice heavy with suppressed anger and inexplicable pain. I left without hesitation. A loud thud sounded behind me. Ethan had collapsed. I urgently called an ambulance. After they rushed him to hospital, I hesitated before calling Viv. After the divorce, Ethan would marry her anyway. Me, the soon-to-be ex-wife, had no business staying. Viv arrived swiftly upon receiving the news, accompanied by Jay. Rising from the corridor bench, I opened my mouth to explain Ethan was in emergency care when Viv stormed over and slapped me hard across the face. My ears rang from the impact as I stared in shock. "You're nothing but a jinx," she hissed with unprecedented venom. "Will you only be satisfied when you've killed him?" Touching my stinging cheek, I raised my hand to retaliate. Jay immediately shoved me to the ground. Standing protectively before Viv, he glared down contemptuously. "You dare fight back?" he barked. "Try hitting her, I dare you." I pressed my palms against the cold floor, trembling with rage. Just then, the emergency room light flicked off. Viv didn't bother confronting me further, immediately rushing forward as the doctor emerged. Jay followed close behind. But as he passed me, he paused. Then his expensive Italian leather shoe came crashing down on my outstretched hand. His 6-foot frame and solid muscle concentrated his full weight into that single point. A strangled cry tore from my throat, tears flooding my vision. When I glared up, the overhead lights blurred his features into a vicious smirk. "Go ahead. Call the police." His mocking lips shaped the words like venomous breath. Suddenly I was drowning again in those suffocating memories, the moral persecution, the psychological warfare, the endless darkness that had broken me before. Ice water seemed to pour through my veins, extinguishing what little resolve remained. The truth crystallized bitterly. Jay's family was extremely influential. Reporting him would be like personally delivering an invitation for more humiliation. Before, he'd at least pretended civility when Ethan was around. But now that Ethan and I were through, he didn't bother hiding his contempt anymore. It finally made sense. Jay was Viv's attack dog. Whatever Viv desired, Jay destroyed. Her hatred had become his obsession. I sat gathering myself until the pain subsided, then left without looking back. The moving truck carried all my belongings away from downtown's glittering towers to the musty suburban house. The TV droned with dated operas as I entered. The wheelchair-bound woman on the balcony stirred, roomy eyes sharpening behind thick lenses. Told you you'd get thrown out. My mother sneered at my luggage, not even bothering with greetings before launching into her routine. Stop unpacking. Ryan's home, put on decent clothes and meet him. Am I some desperate man chaser? I slammed a sweater into the suitcase. If you love Ryan so much, why don't you marry him? Last I checked, he's still jobless after prison. Her face twisted viciously. You think anyone else would take used goods like you? Keep refusing and you'll die alone, dragging me down. The familiar script unfolded, her shrill voice counting button presses on the ancient flip phone. My hands shaking as I shoved mothball-scented clothes into drawers. The mildew choking the air suddenly felt indistinguishable from the rot festering in my chest. A lump lodged in my throat, suffocating me with frustration. Reasoning with her was impossible. Her antiquated beliefs had seeped into her bones, demanding even her own flesh and blood to conform. I abandoned my half-packed suitcase, shoving everything into my room before slamming the door. I won't burden you, I declared. I'll move out this week. The whirring of wheelchair wheels approached through the thin walls. Fists pounded against my door as my mother's shrill voice pierced through. How dare you rebel like this? Think you're so independent now? Her words turned venomous. Even if you leave, you'll meet that Ryan. Do you want the whole neighborhood laughing at me? First your divorce, now this disgrace. Ryan's perfectly decent, stop listening to gossip. I'm your mother. Wouldn't I protect you? I jammed earbuds in until her voice dissolved into static, scrolling through rental listings with trembling fingers. This house hadn't changed, every breath here still choked me. I'd foolishly believed hiding until Ethan woke from his coma to finalize our divorce would bring peace. But fate twisted cruelly. After another bout of nausea sent me retching into the bathroom, I stared at the 2 red lines on the pregnancy test. Cold realization dawning. In my previous life, I'd been too consumed by arguments with Ethan and paranoia over Viv's involvement to notice my changing body. Now, with divorce proceedings underway and Ethan's sudden cancer deterioration keeping me from hospital vigils, Viv's clan lost their chance to weaponize his diagnosis against me. The cruel timing unveiled the secret instead. My forehead pressed against the fogged mirror as grief washed over me. When I died last time, I'd carried the same life unknowingly. 2 souls extinguished together. Stealing myself. I met my reflection's gaze. This child couldn't stay. With battles looming against Ethan and his family, I lacked means to protect it. My palm rested on flat abdomen as strategy crystallized. However strained our relationship, decades of history meant Ethan wouldn't easily let go. This doomed pregnancy could become my most potent weapon. Forgive me, I whispered into the stillness. Dawn found me creeping through dim corridors, duffel bag in hand. The squeak of wheelchair brakes froze me mid-step. Morning light silhouetted my mother's hunched form on the balcony, her voice drifting like cemetery mist. Sneaking off to meet some man at this hour? At least it's not your precious Ryan. I snapped, slamming the front door on her gasp of outrage. The situation took an unexpected turn. This time, she didn't argue with me. Instead, she said softly, I've made inquiries for you. Ryan will be back in a few days. You should meet. The door slammed shut behind me. Whatever else she said afterward was likely the same old lectures I couldn't bear to hear. I went to the hospital where Ethan was staying, but didn't visit his room directly. Instead, I observed from the shadows. Ethan had regained consciousness, and Viv stayed by his side the entire day. Jay couldn't endure long stays in the ward, frequently slipping out to the stairwell to chain smoke. Yet he couldn't bring himself to leave completely, repeatedly torturing himself by watching the woman he loved showering tender concern on his best friend. It was then that I deliberately descended the stairs. Hearing the noise, Jay looked up. His expression darkened upon recognizing me. What are you doing here? He demanded. exhaling smoke. Didn't learn your lesson last time? I met his gaze and smiled coldly. How does a privileged girl like Viv sink so low as to knowingly be the other woman? Jay's face contorted with rage. Watch your damn mouth. He snarled, jabbing his finger at me. I took a calculated step closer. Changed my mind. I'm not divorcing Ethan after all. That way. Your precious tramp will never get her claws on him. Though honestly, that used-up slut and her pathetic simp make quite the pair. The cigarette fell from Jay's trembling fingers as he lunged at me with a curse. His violent shove sent me tumbling down the concrete stairs. From his elevated position, he glared coldly at my crumpled form until I curled around my abdomen, whimpering through pale lips. My baby. The blood drained from his face. Despite immediate medical attention, the pregnancy couldn't be saved. Not that it ever could have been. I'd taken abortifacients before coming here. When I opened my eyes, Ethan sat vigil at my bedside in his hospital gown, eyes bloodshot. He reached for my hand but aborted the movement halfway, voice breaking as he whispered, "The baby, it's gone." We both desperately wanted this child. Ethan had prepared meticulously, quitting smoking and alcohol years earlier, undergoing fertility checkups. Those same tests had revealed his condition. Tears streamed down my cheeks as my anguished gaze found Jay slouching in the corner. With trembling accusation, I pointed at him. He pushed me down the stairs. The devastating truth hung in the sterile air. Ethan turned to his lifelong friend with shattered disbelief. Jay stood speechless, trapped by the irrefutable truth. No matter how vicious my words had been, his violence remained undeniable. The next second, Ethan lunged forward, his fist whipping Jay's head sideways. He viciously yanked Jay's collar, roaring with barely contained fury. "Are you out of your mind? She's my wife. That was my child." Their brawl spilled across the hospital floor, Jay mostly taking punches without fighting back. When Viv moved to intervene, Ethan shoved her hard against the wall. Jay finally snapped, shoving Ethan away. "What about Viv then?" He spat, breathing raggedly. "What the hell is she to you?" The room froze. Ethan's gaze flicked to me, pale and broken on the hospital bed, still reeling from our child's death. He swallowed his rage, throat working as he smoothed his rumpled shirt. Viv reached to comfort him, but he stepped back sharply. History repeated, yet twisted. "I've only ever considered Viv a friend," Ethan stated coldly. Viv staggered like she'd been slapped. Jay cursed, roughly dragging her out while shoulder-checking Ethan. I watched numbly as Ethan summoned nurses to move his hospital bed beside mine, determined to stay close. Overnight, he reverted to the devoted husband, all tender caresses and protective vows. "Even if it's Jay," he murmured, kissing my icy fingers. "Hurting you means war. Our baby will be avenged." My breath hitched. But as his thumb stroked my wedding band, his touch suddenly stilled. We both froze. Ethan's gaze sharpened, drilling into me. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" The endearment dripped like poisoned honey. I withdrew my hand, unease coiling in my gut. "Just tired." He studied me for 3 excruciating heartbeats before tucking me in. Moonlight bled through curtains as he settled into his adjacent bed. Days blurred into his relentless caretaking, a sick man playing nurse, intercepting medical staff who tried to warn me. His overcompensation reeked of guilt. If I didn't know better, I'd think his affair with Viv and cruel divorce threats had been nightmares. I maintained cautious neutrality until the night truth surfaced. Darkness clung to 3 a.m. when Ethan slipped onto the balcony, assuming me asleep. The cold metal 4-pole chilled my palm as I crept closer. Should have known she'd change after the divorce papers. Ethan hissed to the void, cigarette ember flaring. "Damn it. Jay must have gotten to her first. She's using me for revenge. Even sacrificed our..." His voice broke. The wind swallowed the rest. Ice flooded my veins. Not paranoid then. The system in my mind whirred to life. Its earlier warnings confirmed, host's suspicion validated. Target's blackening value now at 78%. Proceed with extreme caution. My heart sank. He had noticed everything. Ethan had confiscated my phone. He'd been using the excuse of letting me rest to keep it from me. The next day, when my phone buzzed with incoming messages, Ethan was peeling fruit. He picked up my device, scanning the screen before looking up with a mocking smile. "Honey, who's Ryan? Why's he suddenly asking to meet? You never mentioned him." I forced my expression neutral, extending my palm. "He's a cousin. Our families were close before they moved away years ago. Probably visiting my mom while in town." Ethan handed back the phone without further questions. He knew my fraught relationship with Mom, how her obsession with appearances once made her curse him so viciously he still avoided mentioning her. The messages glared on screen. Ryan, where? Ryan, location, Ryan, come now. As Ethan stepped toward the bathroom, I feverishly typed 2 addresses, the hospital and Ethan's home. Ryan? Me, help. I deleted the exchange, replacing it with fake bickering about family drama. Ryan's terse responses mirrored childhood patterns, all question marks and calling me crazy. A pale hand snatched the phone before I could react. Ethan scrolled through our fabricated sibling banter, chuckling before powering off the device. "Rest now. The driver's taking us home soon. Is your condition better?" I asked flatly, fingers clenching beneath the sheets. "Home rest will suffice." He evaded. Panic surged. Once trapped in that house, escape became impossible. I bolted when he left, only to collide with Ethan's chest at the doorway. His grip on my wrist turned vice-like. Hours later, I stared at the soundproofed walls of Ethan's custom basement prison. My last hope now rested with that unreliable childhood friend who might not even decipher the address's obscure characters. I should have called the police immediately. In my memory, Ryan Foster had always been a notorious troublemaker since childhood, never studying or behaving properly. He was 5 years older than me, while I was still an obedient elementary school student carrying my backpack. He'd already started hanging out with shady crowds, getting into fights and collecting protection money around town. Since our mothers were close friends, he somewhat looked out for me. Once when local thugs stole my lunch money, Ryan grabbed a wooden pole and chased them for blocks. Not only did he retrieve my money, but he also used all the cash those thugs had extorted to buy me candy. Later, when I got into a prestigious high school, I met Ethan. Ryan failed his exams and dropped out to work odd jobs, after which we completely lost contact. The occasional rumors I heard about him over the years were all terrible, allegedly getting girls pregnant then forcing abortions, developing gambling addictions while constantly demanding money from his family, even being arrested for some unspecified crime. The image of that rebellious yet protective older brother from my childhood grew increasingly hazy. Even when my mother suggested arranging a blind date with him recently, my immediate reaction was disgust and resistance. How could I possibly entrust my survival hopes to someone like him? I shifted slightly, making the chains tethering me to the bed frame clank ominously in the dim, windowless basement. Before the metallic echoes faded, steady footsteps descended the concrete stairs. Ethan had changed into casual homeware, a soft beige sweater and gray sweatpants that sculpted his jade-like physique. Strands of hair fell over his sharp brows as he smiled gently, the picture of harmlessness. Yet this man wanted me dead. He dragged the basement's sole chair to my bedside, then placed something on my lap, the divorce papers he'd found in my bag, already signed. "You've always been stubborn and temperamental," Ethan said with feigned sadness. "Until finding this. I thought you were just acting out." "Why? Darling? Don't you still care for me?" I stared at him like seeing a stranger. "You're planning to kill me, yet ask if I care?" His smile never wavered. "You heard them, this mission is mandatory. But after completion, I'll gain one resurrection privilege. Leaning closer, he vowed. I won't let you die. Even though Viv is this world's heroine, my heart belongs only to you. You don't trust me? It wasn't about trust. I didn't believe a single syllable. Did he think I was still that gullible teenage girl? Ethan sighed dramatically. I truly love you. But if you insist on opposing me. His fingers brushed my cheek. I'll have to resort to less pleasant methods. He vanished after that day. Now new footsteps echoed downstairs. A familiar figure shuffled into view with glazed, unfocused eyes and stiff movements. Jay. The input seemed to be under control. Yet the practiced ease with which he dragged the blade across my skin inch by inch betrayed terrifying familiarity. As I screamed in agony, curling into a corner to escape him, it suddenly dawned on me, this was Ethan's design. The person I feared and loathed most in this world had always been Jay. That's why Ethan chose him as my tormentor, recreating the same psychological warfare that had shattered me in my previous life. Even if I logically knew Ethan orchestrated this, my broken psyche would inevitably beg for his salvation when pushed to the brink. Ethan understood me too well. We'd spent 3 years as classmates, 7 as lovers, marrying straight out of college. At his most obsessive, he'd even counted every strand of hair on my head. He could read my thoughts from the slightest twitch of a finger. Their tag team torture continued, Jay playing the brute while Ethan left calculated reminders of himself. After each session, I'd wake to find some relic of our past love, a concert ticket stub, my favorite novel, yesterday's wilted roses. This time when consciousness returned, the demon was absent. Instead, a porcelain doll stared from the bedside alongside a handwritten note, how about giving me another child? Happy face. Crimson bloomed through the filthy sheets as I stared at that smiling emoji. My matted hair stuck to tear-swollen eyes. Something inside me snapped with metallic finality. The scream tore from my throat before I could stop it. Crash. The cellar door exploded inward. Boots pounded down stone steps. Sis. Through blurred vision, I saw him, a towering figure in motorcycle leathers. Military short hair framing a face all sharp angles and contained fury. Ryan froze momentarily at the sight of me, then swore viciously through clenched teeth as he wrapped me in his jacket. I'm getting you out. The distinctive click-clack of a pistol being cocked echoed behind him. Ethan stood silhouetted in the doorway, weapon aimed at Ryan's skull. She's my lawful wife. Our marital disputes don't concern outsiders. Ryan adjusted his grip on me, unflinching. You call this a marital dispute? He jerked his chin at my bleeding arms. Last warning, step aside. When Ethan didn't move, Ryan dropped his voice. Her mother's coding. You really want her to die hating you? The gun didn't waver. No one's taking her from me. Then you'll watch her sanity unravel. Ryan shouldered past him. Your choice, a grieving daughter at a deathbed, or another corpse in this fucking dungeon. You have to let them see each other one last time. Speaking of my mother, she always cared too much about what the neighbors thought of us. But truthfully, apart from Auntie Sue downstairs, she had no real friends. She was gossipy, quick-tempered, her weathered face perpetually drawn into that bitter, resentful expression. She'd complain to anyone who'd listen. No one wanted to be around her. But the elders said she hadn't always been like this. In her youth, she'd been cheerful and vivacious, making friends wherever she went. Poor judgment led her to marry a truly vile man. Everything changed after that. My mother's leg? He's the one who crippled it. Those strong legs that could once walk miles without tiring now trembled climbing stairs. She tried fighting back once. It only made the beatings worse. So she never dared again. I was in middle school then, all rebellious anger. Seeing her cry alone day after day. I snapped, why don't you just divorce him? She slapped me. What kind of talk is that? She hissed. He's still your father. Furious and hurt, I decided they deserved each other, the abuser and his willing victim. What fool would bother caring? Yet I never imagined this timid, superstitious woman, this embarrassment of a mother, would ever dare commit murder. The victim? The man she drilled into me was head of our household, my father. Police swarmed our alley within minutes, spectators packing the narrow lanes. But she never went to prison. Mental illness, the verdict said. Even I was stunned when she produced stacks of medical records stamped with official hospital seals. The officers exchanged uneasy glances. My mother stood unnervingly calm. Only I noticed the dates on those documents. Frozen in disbelief. Neighbors began crossing the street to avoid us. She must have been cheating, they whispered. Got caught and killed him in shame. Why else endure decades of beatings only to snap now? They feared her yet looked down on her, petitioning the neighborhood committee to drive out this ticking time bomb. My mother ignored them all, withdrawing into near-complete isolation. The world saw only a deranged pariah. But I knew the truth. She did it to protect me. 1 month earlier, my biological father had assaulted me. When he tried forcing himself further, my mother walked in. She exploded like a lioness, clawing and biting as they wrestled. The bastard overpowered her, fleeing with scratches down his face. We sat clutching each other on the floor, tears mingling in our hair. That's when the medical records began appearing, dated from that very week. I still don't know what resolution she made that night. The next day, she knocked on Mrs. Foster's door and asked her to take care of me for a while. She told Mrs. Foster the truth without hiding anything. Mrs. Foster, heartbroken and furious, immediately agreed. Not only that, she called Ryan and made him escort me to and from school every day, following me whenever I left the house. But she didn't tell Ryan the reason. She said only the three of us would ever know, not even her own son. Thankfully, Ryan obeyed his mother without question. During that time, he even stopped hanging out with his gang, dutifully sticking by my side to protect me. A month passed peacefully. Then I stood in the crowd, staring blankly as the police arrived and arrested my mother. She was covered in blood, yet her expression was calm, almost relieved. She held her head high as they led her away, scanning the crowd until her eyes landed on me. I watched her lips part, her voice overlapping with the memory of that day I'd stormed out. Refusing to listen, she said, "Would your own mother ever harm you?" I never saw her again. She left me no final words. Only a property deed and a bank card containing her life savings sat quietly on the living room coffee table, as if telling me, "This is all I can give you now. You're on your own." Numbness hollowed me out. I felt no grief, yet tears streamed endlessly until I collapsed beside her wheelchair, unconscious. Mrs. Foster and Ryan handled the funeral arrangements. Truthfully, Ryan did everything. If Mrs. Foster hadn't restrained me, I'd have crawled into that coffin to rest with my mother forever. I jerked my head around. Ethan stood a short distance behind me, silent, a silver gun in his hand. The overcast sky cast gloom as damp wind whipped his black trench coat. A white rose pinned to his chest pocket seemed to mourn someone. We stared across the void for eternity. His face grew paler, eyes brimming with anguish and guilt. His trembling lips formed a whisper, "I'm sorry." He finally raised the gun, its dark muzzle aimed at my heart. Then, a dull thud. Ethan collapsed, the weapon skidding into bushes. Ryan picked it up, his other hand gripping a shovel flecked with fresh soil. "Think this some TV drama?" He scowled, phone already dialing 911. One boot planted on the shovel pinning Ethan's unconscious body. Acting like nobody's watching, the scene was oddly comical. I twitched my lips and turned back to burning paper money in the fire basin. A gentle breeze swept through. Flames suddenly leaped from the basin, forming a dazzling vortex of sparks in midair. They swirled once, twice, lingering reluctantly before the departing wind carried away the ashes of burnt offerings. As day turned to night, the divorce proceedings progressed smoothly. With Ryan's testimony and irrefutable evidence from the basement, Ethan faced charges of spousal murder and abuse. Simultaneously, his company declared bankruptcy, assets frozen, and illegal firearm possession brought to court. Viv ignored his pleas this time, while Jay not only refused assistance but actively sabotaged him by submitting additional financial crime evidence to prosecutors. Overnight, Ethan fell from celebrated golden boy to reviled corporate villain. I watched the trial footage, his dazed expression crumbling into tearful begging upon hearing the death sentence. This pathetic display only confirmed his true nature. Multiple convictions culminated in execution by firing squad. He desperately begged for a final meeting beforehand, curious about his last words. I obliged. His bloodshot eyes lit up like I was his salvation when I entered. The unshaven, wild-eyed man frantically pleaded, "There's still time, you can fix this. Lucy, just help me." I snorted coldly and turned to leave. Ethan lunged toward the window to grab me, only to be wrestled down by guards. His anguished screams followed me. "Wife! Lucy! You promised to stay forever." My steps faltered briefly before resuming without turning back. His despairing wails faded behind me. "Unfair. Who'd willingly die for someone? You lied. Let me restart." It felt like my tormented past life had become some distant nightmare. Dawn now illuminated the world he'd never comprehend, one where I truly mourned him through death. He simply wasn't worth it. On the curb, I stared at the 8-figure luxury car. My gaze shifted between the vehicle and Ryan leaning out the window. Sunglasses, clad arm flexing ridiculously. "Did you rob a bank?" I asked pointedly. "Or join the mafia?" Ryan yanked off his shades, glaring. "Poisoned your own tongue? Could have earned it honestly." With exaggerated flair, he emerged from the driver's seat, those absurdly long legs strutting over before opening the passenger door like some cheesy gentleman. I buckled in skeptically. "Business?" My raised eyebrow spoke volumes. "Contrary to your beliefs." He sighed, starting the engine. This college dropout worked his ass off building enterprises overseas. Surprised? I froze for a moment before blurting out without thinking, "Aren't you supposed to be in prison?" Screech! Ryan jerked the steering wheel, executing a perfect drift that brought the car to an abrupt halt by the roadside. He remained silent, taking deep breaths before turning to stare at me impassively. "Who fed you that nonsense? You actually believed it?" Well. I guiltily averted my gaze, desperately trying to recall the origin of this rumor. Suddenly, everything became clear. My eyes swept across the faces of those present as realization dawned. Ryan tapped his finger against my forehead in exasperation. "Since when do we trust that old liar? He still holds a grudge after my mom rejected his advances decades ago. Remember how he kept spreading those vile rumors about our family? What were you thinking, knowing I'd wronged him?" I kept my head bowed under his accusatory stare. Now that I thought about it, my behavior seemed incomprehensible. Mrs. Foster had always been kind, and Ryan had protected me since childhood. How could I have distanced myself from them? As if under some kind of spell, even believing such absurd gossip? My chaotic thoughts were interrupted by a ringing phone. To my shock, it was Jay calling. My brows furrowed tightly. What does he want now? Before I could react, Ryan reached over and decisively ended the call, restarting the engine with steady hands. His calm voice reassured me, "Don't worry. I'm already arranging to deal with him. Ethan's locked up, and Jay won't escape either. With me here, no one will dare bully you again." Those final words kindled warmth in the quiet car interior. Touched. I looked up to thank him only to notice his slightly reddened ears. Ryan cleared his throat awkwardly. "Mom mentioned, you agreed to our blind date?" Anyway, come over for dinner tonight? She made your favorite braised short ribs. I turned toward the window, watching the passing scenery and leisurely pedestrians. Suppressing a smile, I mimicked his fake cough before answering, sure.